Hi, I'm Leslie, one half of Book Me Bite Me. We provide fun and inspirational materials for international learners of English to improve their listening, reading, and vocabulary skills. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Recently, we summarized and reacted to Alexander Pushkin's novella, The Snowstorm. Today, follow along with me on a form of adult story time as I read out the first section of The Snowstorm. If you're following along in this book, you'll need to open up to page 38. The Snowstorm. Horses speed along the hill, trampling the heavy snow. God's house off to one side, lonely looking. Suddenly, a snowstorm all around, snowflakes falling heavily. A black raven, its wings whistling, drives above the sleigh, prophetic wail affirming sadness. Horses hurry, peering into the distant darkness, shaking their manes. Zhukovsky. Toward the end of 1811, a time we all remember, a good man named Gabriel Gabrielovich R. was living in his home village of Nenorodovo. He was famous throughout the region for his warmth and hospitality. His neighbors visited his house regularly to eat, drink, play whist for 5 kopeck stakes with his wife, or, in a few cases, to get a look at his daughter, Maria Gabrielovna, a sturdy and fair 17-year-old. She was considered a catch, and many sought her for themselves or for their sons. Maria Gabrielovna had been raised on French novels. It should therefore go without saying that she was in love. The object of her affection was a poor ensign who was staying in his village on leave. Naturally, the young man burned with passions equal to her own. Naturally, too, her parents, who had noticed the pair's burgeoning connection, forbade their daughter even to think about him, and began showing the young ensign an even worse welcome than the one they might have given to a retired land assessor. Our lovers wrote letters and met daily, alone, in a pine grove, or by the old chapel. There they pledged their eternal love to one another, lamented their fate, and discussed various possible plans. Talking and corresponding in this way, they arrived, as can only be expected, at the following thought. If we cannot live together, and the harsh will of our parents prevents our happiness, then isn't it right for us to ignore that will? This happy idea appeared first, of course, in the young man's head. Then it was highly appealing to Maria Gabrielovna. This can easily be guessed. Winter came and put a stop to their meetings, but their correspondence only grew livelier. In letter after letter, Vladimir Nikolaevich begged Maria Gabrielovna to give herself to him, to marry him in secret, to hide for a period of time, and then, when this time was over, to throw herself at her parents' feet, at which point they would of course be so touched by the unhappy lover's heroic devotion that they would certainly say to them, "Children, come back to us." Maria Gabrielovna hesitated for a long time. Most of the plans for elopement were rejected. Finally, she agreed on the designated day she would forego dinner and retire to her room under the pretense of a headache. Her maid, who was in on the plan, would accompany her through a back exit to the garden, where they would find a sled prepared to take them from Nenorodovo to the village of Zhadrino, a distance of 5 verst, and then straight to the church. Vladimir himself would be waiting there for them. The night before it was all set to happen, Maria didn't sleep. She packed, tied up her underclothes and dress, and then wrote 2 letters, one long one to a sentimental lady friend, and another to her parents. She said goodbye to them with the most heartfelt expressions, excusing herself due to the irresistible passions that were forcing her hand, and concluding, moreover, that the happiest moment of her life would come when she was permitted to throw herself at the feet of her dear, dear parents. After sealing both letters with a Tula signet ring, 2 flaming hearts above an appropriate inscription, she collapsed on her bed just as dawn was breaking and began to doze off. But horrible dreams kept her from sleeping soundly. It seemed that the moment that she got in the sleigh and prepared to sled off for the wedding, her father rose up with terrible speed, stopped her, pulled her out onto the snow, and then threw her into a dark and bottomless pit. She fell swiftly, her heart sinking indescribably. Next, she saw Vladimir lying on the grass, pale and blood-stained. As he died, he prayed to her in a piercing voice to sleep with him as a wife. Other misshapen, senseless apparitions dragged themselves past her one after the other. At last, she woke up paler than usual and with a real headache. Her mother and father noticed how uncomfortable she was. Their tender concern and incessant questioning, "What's the matter, Masha? Are you sick, Masha?" wrenched her heart. She tried to calm them, but couldn't. Night came. The idea that she was spending her last day with her family was awful to her. She was barely alive. Secretly, she was saying goodbye to everyone, to everything she saw around her. When dinner was served, Maria's heart started beating strongly. In a trembling voice, she explained that she didn't want to eat dinner and stood up to say goodnight to her father and mother. They kissed her and blessed her the way they always did. She just barely stopped herself from crying. Back in her room, she threw herself into an armchair and burst into tears. Her maid calmed her down and told her to take heart. Everything was ready. Half an hour later, she would be leaving behind forever her parents' house, her room, her quiet girlhood. Outside there was a storm. The wind was howling. The shutters knocked and shook, all of which seemed to her a sad sign of things to come. Soon, everything in the house had quieted down and gone to sleep. Masha wrapped her shawl around herself, put on a warm cloak, grabbed her hope chest, and went to the rearmost hall. The maid carried the 2 bundles for her. They went into the garden. The storm had not abated. The wind met them head on, as if trying to stop the young, rash woman. It was difficult for her to make it across the garden. The sleigh was waiting for them on the road. The horses, who were freezing, refused to stand still. Vladimir's coach driver was walking around in front of the sleigh shafts, trying to restrain them. He helped the young woman and her maid take their seats, packed up the bundles and chest, and took up the reins, and the horses took off. Having given Our Lady over to her fate, not to mention the skillful hands of a coach driver named Tereshka, we will now turn to our young lover. We will pause here on page 42 of The Tales of Belkin by Alexander Pushkin. We will pick up our story tomorrow, and we will continue into the second segment of the novella, The Snowstorm. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy reading.